What's up, guys, and welcome back to Rougefx. Today we are adding another video to this series, Roguefx Trading System, Market Maker Mastery. I pretty much break down what's essentially going on and how to develop your understanding, your retinal activating system, maybe even your awareness, in order to expedite your initially your trading journey, but most definitely your progress through the three phases: conscious introduction, imagination and anticipation, as well as knowing and becoming, right? So the three phases. The first phase being the beginner, second advanced, as well as the masterclass being the third. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel because we do aim to post consistently. Understand that this is a members only exclusive video, right? So I'm going to be essentially putting you on game, really kind of helping you understand these markets, price action, as well as market structure to a significant degree, of course. This is gold, essentially XAUUSD. For those who are very much, I heard it in one of the videos before. It was Goldilocks, but whichever case, let's very much get started. I do appreciate you guys for tuning in, and again, I just got to say it. Thank God for my career. Thank God for the opportunity to very much put you on game, my friends. Really kind of help you understand that these markets aren't so hard or complex, really, if you obviously follow the process and really kind of trust it, essentially, right? Without further ado, let's get started. As you can see, my friends, dealing with essentially this long opportunity, or buy opportunity, of course. Regardless, we are very much going to understand our range as a weak high, protected low. Protected low because obviously we broke liquidity towards the left. Weak high because again we broke liquidity towards the left, and of course continued in the opposite direction. As you can see, price very much continued towards the lows, failure to break a particular low or previous low, continue towards the highs, again failing to break a previous high, in whichever case allowing liquidity to essentially be a significant, we'll call it an equal low. At this point, it was fairly obvious to really kind of identify our point of interest as the order block, or I should say rejection blocks towards the left. Price essentially reaches, dips into liquidity, and continues towards the highs. Moving on to our next phase. As you can see, my friends, price essentially builds up a significant amount of liquidity, essentially buy stops in whichever case, understanding that, well, these are weak highs, and these highs are very much being taken out, as well as being left on occasion, of course, as well as price continuing to obviously continue towards the lows, failure to break a significant or major low. Price actually continues towards the highs, essentially fulfilling in an unmitigated wick, as well as giving us our proper understanding of what's going on. A liquidity grab is now magnetizing towards where? A mitigation sequence, in whichever case we very much have a bearish rejection block that we can take as a significant point of interest, right? As well as the shadow, of course, to continue towards the highs, essentially magnetizing, or essentially, mitigation sequences breeding a liquidity grab, which honestly can go a significant degree in whichever case relative towards the previous expansion towards the left. Phenomenal trade opportunity, if I really do say so myself. Moving on to our third and final phase of this particular setup, we have essentially we're going to be looking for half trends and full trends. As you can see, my friends, we have a significant protected low as well as a weak high going to act as our full trend. We also have a rejection block in whichever case towards the left that we can very much take as a weak high, weak low, half trend, right? Essentially giving us a significant amount of opportunity to continue towards the highs, right? Very much moving on to our next setup. As you can see, my friends, we have a particular range of a weak low, protected high, right? Is in whichever case, helping us understand that, well, this weak low is essentially not the weakest low, essentially understanding that, well, we have a previous low below that, as well as an inducement to overall reach for it. In whichever case you do see that you might have a particular entry. As you can see, dealing with this, we'll call it a missed trade opportunity, or maybe just a quick stop loss hit. We very much tried to anticipate a quick move towards the lows in whichever case, but we didn't get it, which is fine. At times, you got to realize this is trading. We're dealing with probabilities, and a risk is better than no risk, and then you obviously miss out in whichever case, right? So you miss out on the opportunity, as well as the opportunity to learn, right? As well as the opportunity to really kind of understand yourself when obviously taking risk. So essentially, it's why would you not take the opportunity? Again, understanding our range to be a weak low, protected high, understanding that, well, at this point, we're dealing with a significant half trend, right? Essentially, at this point, we can very much understand that regardless of any kind of movement towards the highs, essentially it's going to be viewed as a liquidity grab, a reach into essentially, we'll call it a liquidity as well as an inducement in this case, right? As well as, overall liquidity being a slanted high, right? In order to very much continue towards the lows, very much targeting, I'm sorry, very much targeting this weak low, essentially, from this bullish rejection block, right? Moving on to the second phase of essentially this overall, this setup, is pretty much understanding that when price is essentially taking out liquidities, being a 3 candle formation in this case, or maybe a weak high or a plethora of weak highs, it's essentially going to act as a liquidity grab. It's important to understand that liquidity grabs magnetize towards mitigation sequences. Essentially, a point of interest is going to be located towards the left, of course, right? As well as mitigation sequences breeding actual liquidity grabs. It's no shocker, essentially, that price essentially decides to turn around on a dime, right? As far as a point of interest, it's important to understand that, well, as you may know, price uses this, we can call it a down move for the up move, or you can very much call it a bearish rejection block, but we use this as a type of mitigation sequence. It's fairly simple, my friends. Understanding that, again, establishing our first liquidity grab and understanding that, well, these are all essentially weak lows, essentially targets, right? On the way down, price will be very much assuming liquidity grabs for you to very much essentially take advantage of, right? And that's the beauty of trading a half trend, and obviously knowing the difference between trends, of course. Moving on to our masterclass perspective within obviously this setup. Let me go ahead and close this real quick. It's important to understand that we have, again, a weak low, weak high. It's going to act as our half trend. In whichever case, let me probably use this weak low, weak high. It's going to act as our fib. Of course, we can very much draw it towards, drag it towards the right, establishing a significant opportunity, wow, a lot, a plethora of anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opportunities before the actual takeoff. It's pretty significant, my friends. As well as, very much understanding that we very much have again, protected high, weak low. In whichever case, we have a significant amount of weak lows below that, of course. Understanding that price essentially takes support upon this, break and retest, maybe even a price action rebalancing opportunity in whichever case, right? However, again, it's important to understand what's actually taking place. We have a protected high as well as a weak low, essentially, allowing for, a significant opportunity for a point of interest in whichever case. If I very much use this fib as, from our half trend and really kind of convert it to our full trend, essentially, again, protected high, weak low. This is really kind of helping us, let me go ahead and delete this, helping us understand the significance of our mitigation sequence key level, as well as, the significant amount of liquidity gaps that very much did take place in whichever regard. This is very much going to act as our master class, or essentially the knowing and becoming of a portion of this systematic trading approach, right? Moving on to our next trade. Okay, so this was one of the trades where I actually took it before, it actually ticks off, right? Understanding that, well, price definitely left a protected low as well as a weak high. We retest for internal risk liquidity, probably going to regard around this mitigation of this bullish rejection block, essentially helping us understand that price essentially did everything it needed to, right? We mitigated a point of interest. We took out internal risk liquidity. Our range is very much set. We have permission to take our trade, regardless if it, obviously retest for internal risk liquidity. Of course, again, it's important to understand that, again, with a trend line, these generally become probably the easiest setups that you will probably take, right? No matter if it's like right here, whichever high or low that, obviously seems to be associating with your trend line, it's probably going to be a significant setup. Moving on to our advanced portion. Again, my friends, we very much have a rejection block towards the left that essentially price kind of, if I take my open and redefine it toward my essentially understanding our discount pricing area, it's important to understand that we have essentially a break and retest, right? Understanding that, well, price is essentially reacting towards this 3 candle formation or QM, helping us essentially rebalance, right? Pretty effectively on the lower time frame, of course, right? This is only the 15-minute, but it's still it's good to understand simply because you're trying to read price action to a certain extent, as well as understand essentially what's kind of going on within the market structure. So at this point, you're understanding this is a protected low instead of a weak low, as well as understanding that, well, this quote unquote protected high is it's not valid, of course, right? It's important to very much understand that mitigation sequences, no matter if it's the unmitigated wick, maybe a 50, maybe even, of course, a rebalancing mechanism. It's important to understand that mitigation sequences breed liquidity grabs, which in a sense, it can go as high as it really wants to, my friends, right? And this, guys, this is understanding that, on the higher time frame, you're going to have to aim for a significant point of interest, whether that be a weak or slanted high in this case, or maybe even an imbalanced close price action, right? So in whichever case, but most definitely helping you understand that really, of course, aim for the pool of liquidity that is essentially, it's there and it's obvious, of course. But again, go back and, study price action and really kind of understand where it kind of goes. At that point, you're really kind of expanding the horizons of, your understanding and really being able to adjust to higher trade opportunities, and really kind of understanding that a lot of these trade opportunities that people are aiming for is essentially a waste of time, and it's obviously falling short simply because it was just time for price to turn around, right? So you missed a pool of liquidity that was significant enough to cause a resistance or a support in whichever case. Moving on to our advanced portion of this particular trade setup. As you know, my friends, we very much have a full trend right here. It's fairly obvious. We have a protected low, weak high, right? We also have an opportunity for, okay, so pretty much understanding the we'll call it imbalance right here that's kind of taking place. If we look left, and of course really kind of sliding this over, really kind of understanding what's happening within price action as well as market structure, we have two rejection blocks and two rejection blocks kind of clashing against each other. Yes, I understand they're both bullish. However, when we're thinking about or really kind of understanding the wicks as well as really kind of clashing against this particular support as well as resistance, or resistance turning into support, it's important to understand that, essentially, again, this is an imbalance, right? So understanding that, well, there is a discount between this imbalance as well as a premium, of course, right? Knowing where you are within price, it kind of gives you that, not a confidence boost. I don't even want to call it a confidence boost, but it's really kind of understanding that, well, this is a significant area for, again, a weak low, weak high, as well as understanding that this is another opportunity to very much identify as a half trend, of course, right? Essentially having you understand that, well, if price can very much wick above this Fibonacci key level, as well as reach back for a pretty quick liquidity grab, continue towards the highs, of course, retest, even if it needs to retest, my friends. Yes, of course, redefine your point of interest to your liking, of course. Maybe even take another trade, right? Understanding that, well, we're taking out internal res liquidity, understanding that we're kind of going up against a significant point of interest. In whichever case, establishing this as a new weak high, we can very much reconfigure our point of interest towards, again, this weak high, understanding that, well, that is essentially going to be our real, in whichever case, full trend, right? But again, we're down here, right? So let's keep it very much simple as well as to the point. I very much hope you did enjoy that illustration and got a few gems from it, of course. Moving on to our next, we had a loss. This happens. It just does, my friends. In whichever case, understanding that, well, we had a potential for a hold within this trend line that didn't very much hold at all, right? It's understanding that, well, this could have been a significant QM. It just wasn't, right? Instead, what did price do? Went for a direct entry and then continued towards the highs. It's fairly simple, my friends. You're either going to get a confirmation or a direct entry. You're going to get an opportunity for a mitigation sequence or a liquidity grab. It's just that simple, my friends. Of course, taking out internal range liquidity, being a slanted low, as well as mitigating a bearish rejection block, kind of providing us our point of interest in whichever case, continuing towards the highs, of course. Moving on to our next trade opportunity. Okay, so in whichever case, we're going to very much take this as a significant liquidity grab as well as a weak high. Price uses this unmitigated wick as a pretty significant point of interest to essentially form a QM and continue towards the highs, as well as, in whichever case, this 3 candle from, we'll call this a trend line. But yes, fairly significant opportunity to very much target. Only of 1 to maybe 3, but again, understand that when you have this skill set to a certain extent, these lower, or I should say these scalp trades, they benefit you the most because they get you to a significant amount of percentage or pip level or whichever the case may be in a shorter amount of time. Essentially, you're taking the trade and closing it just as fast, right? So essentially a scalp trade. But again, these are the most important trades because these are going to be the difference between, being able to very much compound at an effective rate, opposed to, holding swings that may or might not hit your take profit all the time. Really, it's because it takes that amount of time is what I'm saying, right? And, if it takes 3 minutes, not even, if it takes like an hour to hit this, then you're probably going to want to hit this and obviously risk a significant amount, right? In whichever case, right? Moving on to our secondary phase. Let me see. Yep. So my friends, as you can see, looking towards the left, of course, we have a bullish rejection block. Yes, of course. I'm very much redefining this to a essentially our discount pricing, right? Because we're continuing towards the highs, but it's in whichever case, a more expensive price in whichever case, dealing with discount. However, it's important to understand that we can very much redefine this to our unmitigated wick, slide it over. Essentially, price is essentially using this unmitigated wick as a mitigation sequence, right? This mitigation sequence very much breeds liquidity, or an attempt at liquidity via a trend line, as well as then some, of course. Now, pretty much understanding why price decided to switch on a dime. Essentially, liquidity grabs magnetized towards mitigation sequences. So very much, in whichever case, our mitigation sequence is going to act as the highest form of liquidity, understanding that we can very much redefine this toward our nearest, pip in whichever case, and very much targeted after. These are going to be your quote unquote AMD patterns, right? However, it's just liquidity grabs and mitigation sequences working very much in harmony with each other, right? Moving on to the third and final phase of this setup, essentially being the masterclass level. Price very much provides us with an unmitigated wick for essentially a protected low, weak high, right? And this is getting into like crazy, price action analysis, right? Because who's really kind of identifying wick or shadows as actual trends, right? This is going to be called a full trend. As you can see, we have a bit of, we'll call it an imbalance within price that was essentially filled in whichever case, keeping a significant understanding that, this essentially is going to act as a weak low, right? Now, understanding this is a weak low would automatically assume this to be a weak high, weak low, weak high. It's kind of hard not to a certain extent, obviously knowing and understanding your system to a certain degree, it's hard not to say that this is not a half trend. In whichever case, we can draw our trend line. I'm sorry. We can very much draw our fib level, stretch it towards the right, and really kind of identify what's happening, right? Price left an inducement, provided a liquidity grab, continue towards the highs. It's fairly simple, my friends, right? Again, this is going to be your protected low, weak high, full trend. Weak high, weak low, half trend. Fairly simple, my friends. Sad to very much say this is going to be our last setup of the week that we very much did take. We have essentially an opportunity for, of course, a weak low, protected high. It's going to be essentially a half turn, right? Understanding that, this low didn't break this previous low. It's a weak low. Understanding that this high was essentially breached, as well as these emergency exits. 3 candle formation, weak high. Going to act as a significant liquidity grab or a start of a significant series of liquidity grabs, right? So we have an inducement, we have a weak high, we have a QM essentially, right? We also have a failure swing, again, continuing towards the lows, essentially giving us our actual break, retesting for a slanted high liquidity grab, if anything, right, to continue towards the lows. Guys, this is Forex trading at its simplest form, right? Understanding the trend, understanding the point of interest, which is, again, we have a weak low, protected high. We can redefine this protected high to a weak low and understand that, well, this is just a significant amount of liquidity grabs within this half trend, right? And let me clean this up for you. I do apologize. Gone. We have 1, 2, 3 upon our most premium, and our second to most premium we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different opportunities, my friends. That's, again, trading at its simplest, at its most textbook. And if you really need it, my friends, we have an inducement, trend line. We have an inducement, trend line. And really, this is just understanding that, I mean, my friends, I mean, it's going to take some work, yes, but eventually you'll have it. Like, it'll just click, and you'll just be like, oh, well, I know how to do this now, so in whichever case. And as you can see, my friends, there's not a lot of tools on the board. There's not even an indicator. So, I mean, if anything, guys, it's going to take that work. Yes, it's going to take that hard work and, dedication, but it's going to build you and shape you as an individual, and you're going to love yourself for it. But, of course, you got to take the risk. You got to essentially pay your way, simply because, I mean, nothing in this life is free, right? Not even success, of course, right? Moving on to our second phase, or, of course, imagination and anticipation of, overall price. This is pretty much understanding that, well, since we have a liquidity grab towards the left, it's really understanding that maybe this is a start of, I don't know, something new, essentially, right? This is going to start a trend of liquidity grabs in whichever case. Looking towards the left, essentially, this being our weak low in whichever case. Yes, I do understand that this can very much be an inducement. If anything, we'll leave it here, right? This being our inducement, it's very much important to understand that, well, this unmitigated wick can be a source of, a mitigation sequence that price can very much, essentially magnetize to, right? And to the lowest level, essentially extent in whichever case. However, it's important to understand that towards the left, apologies, a bit of lag, we have essentially a rebalancing mechanism, right? We have an imbalance that kind of takes place right here, as well as, an imbalance or quote unquote rebalancing mechanism that very much takes place right here. Price comes back into fill, as well as fill in this imbalance. So essentially, we went a bit deeper than, obviously anticipated, right? But you use your imagination to really kind of assume your we'll call it, your trend, right? So understanding that this is a weak low, really this down here is a weak low as well, is helping you understand that, well, we have a significant amount of opportunity after here, in whichever case, right? Again, understanding that, well, we went from a mitigation sequence, liquidity pool fill, in whichever case, to an imbalance close price action fill, in whichever case, right? I hope this makes sense. But yes, this is just understanding that, well, we just had a ways to go more. However, guys, at times you're going to leave money on the table. You got to accept it. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you start making money consistently, right? Moving on to our masterclass portion of this significant setup, we have a protected high, weak low, right? And guys, this is understanding that, well, this can be used as a weak low. This can be used as a weak low. Like, it's not necessarily just right here or just down here or maybe even just down here. It's all simply a half trend, really kind of understanding itself, right? Okay, as far as a full trend, well, I'm going to use this as a half trend. I like this better. I like half trends as a Fibonacci sequence. You can do the liquidity pool, but it's just personal preference, of course. Essentially, my friends, we have, again, a protected high. Well, here, I said use the protected high, use the weak high. It'll make your, like, as you can see, you can use your protected high, but it's going to make you that much more precise. And you might even miss the trade. But if you use your weak high and weak low, of course, you can very much get a significant, like, hit and you're in, and then it's just there down from there, simply because you're going to catch that expansion towards, whichever case, the lows. As you can see, we have a protected high, right? After this, previous protected high, this becomes our newly found protected high, and a weak low that can be redefined to our premium point of interest. essentially helping you understand the QM that's actually taking place in order to continue, obviously, towards lower prices, being equal lows, and again, an imbalanced close. Fairly simple. So essentially, really understanding that this is going to be your rebalancing mechanism, as well as our imbalanced close price action. Fairly simple, right? And then here's the thing, right? Understanding that, again, half trend, full trend, continue towards the, obviously the lows. It's important to understand that when identifying your mitigation sequence, that when identifying your rebalancing mechanism and imbalanced close, generally your rebalancing mechanism is going to act as a confirmation entry. Your imbalance could probably act as a direct entry. So if price really kind of decided to obviously continue through, break and retest, and obviously provide a liquidity grab and then continue towards the highs, it can do that. In this case, though, price decided to create a significant QM along this support and continue towards the highs. I actually did miss this. I wanted to keep this in here to really kind of help you guys understand that even with imbalanced close price action, rebalance mechanisms, price action inefficiencies alike, right? Of course, because IMBs and price action inefficiencies are the same, But I just, it's how I've, grown up to learn trading. So yeah, in whichever case, we have an unmitigated wick that was, provided with a mitigation sequence opportunity of course, if we really kind of measure it, a significant mitigation key level, which is, again, the reason why price comes back, because with these key levels, they're essentially liquidity, the lowest form of liquidity in whichever case, simply because, of course, they're mitigation key levels, right? If price were to really kind of dip more into the actual liquidity pool of this discount area, then essentially it would be that. But essentially, it only really kind of wicked it, and I wouldn't count that as a significant liquidity, direct entry. So in whichever case, again, this is your system. These are just, tips, or whichever case, take it or leave it, quick little gems. But most definitely, this is going to help a lot of people simply because these unmitigated wicks can seem intimidating. They're not, my friends. They're just, in whichever case, higher time frame order blocks, right? I hope you guys very much did enjoy this video. I appreciate you guys if you really did make it through this video. I appreciate you guys for actually, joining my members only and really kind of taking the initiative to really kind of develop your skills to that certain degree or extent in whichever case. Understand that within these videos, you're going to end up mastering this skill set. That's the goal. That's why I don't hold back in these videos. If y'all are willing to pay, my friends, I'm willing to give you everything I got and really ensure that without me actually being present, y'all are very much going to be okay. Like, y'all are going to be okay. Just keep watching these videos. Keep really kind of tapping into the knowledge that I am very much displaying. And my friends, y'all, you will be very much pristine, perfect. Not necessarily perfect, but your skill sets will be permanently developed to a significant understanding that will take you towards financial freedom, will take you towards generational wealth. This is a vehicle, my friends, and that's the greatest part about this. It doesn't necessarily take over your life too much. It's just something that's maybe a side thing, optional, of course, depending on the window you really want to trade and how long or your quality of trades you want to actually take as you develop, of course. Man, it can really kind of it can really take off for you. You just got to keep working, keep, putting in extra hours, keep really kind of just putting your head down and really kind of just, loving and having that compassion for this, this thing that you've, wanting to learn for so long. You have this opportunity, my friend. And I don't know, I'm just ranting at this point. But again, it makes me so inspired when I see people that are actually taking the initiative and actually doing what they got to do and actually coming back to these videos and really kind of just developing their understanding to whichever case. It's really like, wow, like, understand that this is why I've been put on this earth, and that is to see this, guys. And I'm being honest, there's no one in my memberships only at this point, not even in my community at this point, right? However, I have faith, and I have faith in God that He'll make a miracle happen, regardless of what it looks like right now. Simply because, God's always got me through. If it wasn't anyone else, I promise you, it was God. God is very real. And I'm glad I'm able to share my faith or really kind of my belief in Him through this. Um, yeah. I thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time on Jody FX.